Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark, your host of the Dr. William Clark podcast. Glad to be with you all today. Wanted to welcome you into the podcast and just tell you thank you. Thank you for logging on, subscribing, watching, clicking, liking, sharing this podcast and the previous podcast episodes. It's our desire to provide great content for you, particularly if you are looking for content around nonprofit strategy, nonprofit leadership, and nonprofit fundraising. As you engage in this particular podcast, I'm going to ask that you take a moment to not only take notes as we get started, but also take a moment to share this particular podcast episode with someone in your life who you believe can benefit from this. This can be a colleague, this can be a friend, this can be a partner, it can be a stakeholder, anyone you think can benefit from good content around nonprofit stuff. With that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into our show, and I'll see you guys on the other side. So, everybody, it's Dr. William Clark. Glad to be with you guys for another show. Glad to share this room today. We're live in Clubhouse for the podcast listeners. We're live in Clubhouse today. Got my friend Chris. Chris, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. Out and about, and happy that we finally got our calendars to match.
Absolutely. And then we got some folks in the room, so we're going to definitely get to them in a moment. So, Dr. Lisa, we're going to ask you to sit tight for a quick moment while we get situated. Chris, today we're going to be talking about communication strategies for nonprofits. I'm sure you probably gave an intro before we jumped into the podcast session, but really quick, tell folks about you, what you're into, what you're about, and then we'll jump into our conversation.
Sure. And I actually didn't. I forever forget to intro myself on Clubhouse. So thanks for the opportunity. So my name is Chris. I'm a communications strategist and all the way around business owner. I now own 3 businesses with a 4th on its way. And the first one, the one that I call my starter business, spawns off of my career as a reporter, graphic designer, social media manager, communications manager. And it's a communications agency that helps you to define your lines of communications to help so that you can reach your audiences without breaking the bank or breaking your backs. Essentially, I've been doing this most of my life. I started as a reporter at the age of 14. At the age of 8, I taught myself how to use Desktop Publisher and design some calendars that I sold to my teachers at school so I could buy an American Girl doll. My mom told me we couldn't afford it, and I said, okay, bet, I'll figure that out. And so I have been doing this my entire life. I've played around on computers. All of this is second nature to me. But what I've come to realize specifically for nonprofits is that communications it's a big job. It's a huge job. And most nonprofits don't have the funding to have the 4 or 5 person full-time communication staff that it takes to run the department like it should be. And in fact, a good portion of executive directors and development directors take on the responsibilities in the interim. So I founded Right Now Results as a solution to teach what I know on how to strategize communication so it doesn't feel like it's taking over your life or like it's not doing anything so that you get more people in the door and more dollars behind that. So, that's a little bit about me.
Cool. Thanks for that introduction. Let me jump into a couple of questions, then we're going to field questions from the room. I don't know. I'm going to assume you know the answer to this, but, a lot of nonprofits do struggle with communications as well with other things that really makes the business go. And I don't think a lot of folks consider that nonprofit communications is just as important to the fundraising process as anything else. So with that being said, Chris, in your view, what are the 3 foundational principles of just good communications for nonprofits to consider?
Ooh, so many different angles to take this in. Foundational. The number one thing is that you've got to strategize it. you have more than 25 communications specialties within the communications field, right? So social media strategy, social media management, those are not the same. You've got digital marketing, but then you have digital media management. Those are not the same. Copywriting, copy editing, not the same. Editing and writing, not the same. There are so many things that fall under communications, and not every communications professional is proficient in every one of those specialties. So it's essential that you strategize ahead of time. If you strategize, if you plan, then you know what your marketing pushes throughout the year are going to be. You know what content you're going to need, and you're able to front load that. Get a lot of that stuff done up front. What you're seeing come across the Right Now results Instagram, those are posts that were planned this time last year. And so, number one thing is you have to plan. And the other is that you have to hire in, when you do hire in specialists, hire in the right specialist for what you need. And then the third one is to remember that everyone sees everything. So you may not be doing a direct appeal post on IG or Facebook or even in your email, but your potential donors are watching you. They're watching, and not like in a stalkery way. It's just like, they're regular people, just like you and me. We're regular people. We're donors. And so as your content comes across their feeds throughout the year, not just at the end of the year when you're looking at Giving Tuesday and realize, oh, snap, I'm the only one without a Giving Tuesday campaign. If you are putting out this content throughout the year, even if they're not interacting with it, they are paying attention, even subconsciously. So your marketing and your communications definitely affect your bottom line. And on communications, I want to say marketing falls under communications. That's a whole soapbox. I'll go into that if you want me to, Dr. Clark.
Yeah, let's kind of go a little deeper here, because I think as I'm listening to it, what I am hearing from you, when I tend to hear from folks in your profession, is the importance of planning and strategizing. And I tend to stress that from my view as someone that helps folks think about fundraising strategies. It's all about planning. It's all about strategy. It's all about the approach. Can you just walk us through let me ask you this question. Why do you think, Chris, nonprofits struggle with developing a communication strategy? Why do they avoid that?
Oh, we avoid the things that feel heavy, and things feel heavier when they're not as familiar to us, right? So that's part of the challenge is, if somebody's like, you need a communications plan. All right. Well, I just said there's more than 25 communication specialties. So now we're asking someone who doesn't do communications, isn't familiar with the language or the needs in the department, trying to figure out what specialists need to be hired, what not. Like, I had a client over the weekend contact me about doing a marketing campaign for them, and what they were looking at as the solution would have taken twice the amount of time for what we actually need to do in order to accomplish the objective. So that's part of the problem. And then the other part is that communications isn't considered upfront. In the nonprofit world specifically, the two departments that go underfunded are communications and IT. We're the last two that get thought about. Now, IT got a leg up because of COVID. So now folks are starting to look up and pay attention. Plus, some of those grant dollars are rolling out specifically for IT. But communications just gets left in the dust. And then it's like, oh, snap, we got an event coming up. We need to find somebody. We need to put something together. Your audience can see that. They notice that you just threw together a flyer on postermywall.com and threw it up on your social. And that's why you're not getting any engagement and then the dollars that come behind it.
Yeah, Chris, that is so good. Let me ask you this question. For those that are going to be listening to this on the various platforms where we're going to share this, Talk to us about what a couple of steps nonprofits can take to simplify communications so that it doesn't feel like a heavy lift.
Plan. Plan. So first, primarily, you got to get your org strategy done. If you don't have an org strategy, your communications and marketing is going to be all over the place. So you need to know what your annual objectives are and some of the strategies that you're wanting to deploy in order to reach those organization-wide objectives. Your communications plan is always going to serve your organization or your business plan. So if you ain't got the first part, you can't get the second part. So get that org strategy done. And then the second one, I have a toolkit that will help with this. Not a super pitch, but just saying soft pitch. I have a toolkit that has a bunch of templates in it, but essentially you're going to want to sit down and develop out what your communication strategies are going to be to support your organization goals. And then, and the way that you do that, you know what? I'll give y'all this one. AGP, any good plan includes analysis, goals, and practice. So the first thing you're going to do is a big, strong analysis. You're going to go and look at what your audiences are, who they are. They're internal, they're external, they're your team, they're your board, but they're also the people that you serve. They are the people who could potentially sponsor you. They're the people here on Clubhouse that you talk to. So survey all of those audiences. Go and audit your website, your social media, your everything. Go audit. I'm talking about audit yourself. Did you show up to meetings this year? Did you make sure that you got the paperwork done that you were supposed to get done? You know, all of those things. So you're going to do a deep dive analysis. Do a SWOT analysis. If you've never heard of a SWOT, go and Google it. If you need a template, reach out to me. I think that's one of the pages that we haven't launched. So I could just send you the backlink to that, but it's nothing special. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Do a SWOT analysis on your communications, what you have, what you don't have, the team that you have, the budget you have, the budget you don't have. Then you're going to go into, because any good plan includes analysis, goals, and practice. Then you're going to set your goals, the strategies that support those SMART goals, the action plans that support those strategies. Then you're going to go into your practice phase, and that's where you really save yourself some time. That's where you're going to go back through your action plan, all your goals step, and each one of those, you're going to list out, I need an email for this, I'm going to need a graphic for that, I'm going to need a this for that, and put together an implementation plan. Now you've got a task list that either you can tackle piece by piece throughout the year, or you can hand off, or you can hand off to specialists who can get it done for you and know that you're going to be accomplishing your objectives.
Thanks for sharing that. One more question for you, and probably the biggest one. Folks going to come to me to raise money for their worthy cause. They come to the masterclass to simplify fundraising approaches. And what we help them do, we help them develop their fourth critical document, Chris, and that is their master budget. Within that budget, we need to begin to focus on communication. So let me ask you this question. Obviously, they're going to join the masterclass to figure out how to do this, but what would you say are some of the best practices, best tips for creating a budget for a communication strategy, communication specialist, communication consultant?
And how? All right. Set a real budget. Set a realistic budget if you are hiring. So again, you're looking at your communications plan, and within that communications plan, what strategists, what specialists are you going to need? If you're looking at a consultant, someone to actually get in there, do the work for you, sort out your ideas, all of that stuff, then you are looking at least $1,000, at least. And I'm like, that's me lowballing, all right? But just know that if you need someone to physically figure or to take what is very cloudy for you and you don't have any direction, if you're taking someone or you're expecting someone to take that and turn it into something that's effective, you're looking at a premium cost, you're looking at premium price. Like $1,000 with me, oh, that's not even a planning session. A planning session with me is $1,500. And that's for us to sit down for 2 hours and work out what is going on in your head and strategy or whatever. But that's it. It's 2 hours with me and then a follow-up call a couple of weeks later. So if you're looking for someone to strategize, know that you're looking at premium. If you're looking at someone to execute, depending on what you are looking at, I'm giving y'all like broad strokes so that you can just kind of wrap your head around what kind of possible numbers you're looking at. If you're looking at someone to actually execute, manage certain things, certain components of your communications, then it's going to range. If you get anybody below $250 a month, don't do it. It's not worth it. Don't Fiverr this stuff out, y'all. It's in the end, and I know that some people Fiverr, but every single time without fail that somebody goes to Fiverr and my team ends up on the project, lo and behold, something is missed or it's just completely not great. So you're looking at $250 and up, but also know that if there's a tech component, like my friend Lakeisha down below, she does automation systems. So she sets up Dubsado and Entreport and all these other things. If you're looking at someone dealing in tech, website design, digital marketing, like running Facebook ads, all of that stuff, then you're looking at a higher tier again of expertise because they got to know the codes and to trick the triggers and all of that stuff. So you're looking more on a single project, 1,500 and above, on an ongoing basis. You're looking at $750 a month or so. And like I'm giving because I know that we're dealing with nonprofits and budgets are an issue sometimes. So I'm giving like minimum cost. Know that this is where you're sitting at. Does that help, Dr. Clark?
Oh, yeah, it absolutely helps.
Okay.
And with that being said, guys, let's pause for the cause. Let's reset the room, and we'll be back with you after this. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark, your host of the Nonprofit Funding Tips Club, and I'm glad to have you in the house with us today. And I'm glad to continue our conversations. In this club, we talk about nonprofit fundraising, and our goal is to simplify fundraising strategies for nonprofit organizations without chasing funders. And I'm super excited to have that conversation with you today. As you guys enter into the room and as you stay longer and engage in the content, couple of housekeeping rules. Number one, if you want to have a conversation with me while the teaching is going on, go ahead and tap my profile and then tap the paper airplane to send me a message through the back channel here in Clubhouse. If you prefer to chat with me via Instagram, tap my profile again, scroll to the bottom, tap on my Instagram link there and send me a direct message there, and I'll be glad to communicate with you through either mechanism. If you have a question while the teaching is going on, please raise your hand and let me know that you want to come to the stage, ask a question, and or engage in a conversation about your nonprofit and your fundraising goals. Lastly, if you want to schedule a free consultation with me, those consultations are free. All you got to do is go to DrWilliamPClark.com. Again, it's DrWilliamPClark.com. Click on schedule a free consultation, select a date, a time, and fill out the survey, and we will meet on the date and time that you select. I'm super excited to have you guys in the room, super excited to continue our conversation around nonprofit fundraising and everything involved with that. With that being said, let's get back to our teaching. Guys, want to welcome you into the Nonprofit Funding Tips Room. Glad to be with you guys. We're having a conversation today about communication strategies for nonprofit, and we have our friend in the room, Chris Wright, who is leading this conversation for us, and she's been sharing some awesome tips. I do want to bring to the stage Dr. Lisa Moser. Dr. Lisa, if you don't mind, just refreshing us with what you got going on, and then a question you have for Chris.
Well, I don't want to go as long as I did. Thank you again. To just to be brief, I guess I'm most interested in how do I know I'm making enough progress? I do feel a little disappointed when it comes to donations, and people seem to promise a lot more than actually get sent via my website for donations. I'm interested in the opinion of my service and how my strategy might target a broader audience or those that might be interested that I've not thought about, that might be giving, even though they may not be associated with the education industry or curriculum per se, academia, but might want to support teachers. I'm just looking for advice on as I move forward, because again, this is just my second year, but we got a lot done with very little money. I had a budget. I think the first 6 months I only collected about $6,000, and so the last 4 months a little bit less than that. So I'm talking about probably not even quite $10,000 this first year. So I want to do better going into the second year. So any advice, I'm listening. And again, it's all about supporting teachers, supporting brain health. I really think that the teaching profession is in a lot of trouble. And we were in trouble before this pandemic. That's true. So now that we have a pandemic, it's devastating for some districts. Teachers are retiring and not wanting to even enter the classroom after graduating. And so teacher retention is a huge problem. And we want to keep the talent that is coming into the classroom strong and healthy. So that's, the overall motivation behind keeping teachers healthy and taking care of themselves. I am a peer support specialist certified in 2 states, North Carolina and Georgia, and I facilitate a warm line. And what I would like to also have a better reception is my workbook and also my online class that helps teachers to, identify where we're neglecting ourselves the most and work on routines daily that will enhance our ability to stay strong, lean, and mean, so to speak. Okay, I think that's it in brief. Thank you.
Chris, you want to tackle that?
Oh, all day long. Dr. Lisa, you got it going on, right?
Yeah, in my head, maybe. I don't know. I think so.
You got like all the pieces and stuff. So you have all of the pieces of a digital sales funnel or a funnel period. Are you familiar with the term funnel?
No, I've not heard that. Mm-mm.
Okay. So I encourage you to do some research. I'm going to give you broad strokes. There are different ways that people look at it. You have your traditional sales funnel. I know you've probably heard about it takes 6 touch points for someone to convert to where they purchase, or in this case, donate, right? So there's your traditional funnel of making sure that this is why salespeople call constantly because they know that the more that they communicate with you, the more they're softening you up for this sale. And it's the same thing, not exactly the same, right? But same principle for donations. With digital media having come out, you now have your digital media funnel, and you have that already built out. You have all of the components to go out and find someone who knows how to automate. So your entry point, and the idea is that you have different price points or touch points to one, capture people at their different budgets, but also to gain that know, like, trust factor until the point where they do the ultimate purchase that you would like them to do. So in your case, say your fundraising goal is or objective is to get you're going after monthly contributions, getting monthly commitments of $200 a month. That's your ultimate objective. So your funnel would be that you got this workbook that's a free download. Now that they've downloaded it, now they're on your email list, and you're able to call them or email them individually, not too much because spam rules and laws. But now you're able to have a conversation with them, one-on-one in some way, invite them to maybe a connection call and talk to them. And then the next step up is that you have the group that they can pay to be a part of. And it's a little bit more, now they're paying. Now you've got a little bit, they've reached in their pockets once. The easiest sales that you can make, and this is research proven, the easiest sales that you can make are from the people who have already paid you. So now they're paying just a little bit to go to the group. And then ultimately, I think there was another step in there that you mentioned, something that's in person. And then, somewhere along the line, ultimately getting them to make that monthly commitment to keep this programming running. So you have all of the makings of what would be a funnel, but it's now time for you to connect all the dots, get the emails going behind it, get it set up on automation in the background. Now, that's all the digital side. That has nothing to do with the million and other audiences that you can speak to and the different ways that you can speak to them. I took a look at your website. You'll want to update that website and your social where you're talking to teachers. Speak their language. What are they talking about? What are they worried about? What do they care about? So talk to them. For the Comms Academy for Right Now Results, I'm talking specifically to people who manage nonprofit communications, right? And so the language that I use or the topics that I bring up in our articles, most of that comes out over on LinkedIn, but with the language and the topics that we bring up are related to what is frustrating for people who are having to manage communications for nonprofits. So you're going to want to update some other things. You also can deal with some like one-on-one emails and all of that. Dr. Clark can help you out with a fundraising plan, and communications is going to be woven all up and through that. So is your brand developed out, Dr. Lisa?
I hope I have a brand. I will say, let me admit that all the services that we offer for teachers are free for the teachers. And how I was able to go about, and a lot of the donations were just one-time donations, $200 here, $500 here, a church member, a youth pastor, a YMCA director, just people that I have known. And, my concern is I can't keep, asking my friends to support my nonprofit. I need to do maybe, I think the term is cold calls. I need to, branch out more, and I'm not really sure, who would I target that would be interested in supporting teachers that would, appreciate the service that, teachers are being given. That's a concern.
Dr. Clark, do you have?
Yeah, I was going to jump in there because I think our worlds kind of collide, Chris, in that this could be a communication challenge to be resolved, or this can be a fundraising strategy to be developed and implemented. So, for example, when you talk about supporting the teachers, I tend to hear in that language, who can we find to fund this work since this is free to teachers? So I'm thinking about the school districts. I'm thinking about foundations. I'm thinking about individual donors. I'm thinking about providers in the community who want to partner with teachers but don't know how to tap into teachers as a extension of their programs, and would they provide this type of support by way of agreeing to a subcontract with you. So I think between communicating what's going on and how it's benefiting teachers as well as the community as well as kids, and then looking at the right revenue mix, I think it could get you some of the results that you're looking for.
Uh,
Yeah.
Dr. Clark, one more question, please. And thank you for this. And I really appreciate the funnel, lesson, the lesson on funneling. I took notes. I did get an offer from a small school district, and what they wanted was a MOA. I think it was MOU or something. It was a contractual type agreement. I wasn't familiar with it. The amount of money was like for $20,000. And yes, I did turn it down because I felt that contract was a bit overreaching. Had the amount been like maybe like $90,000, then I think I would have done anything they asked me to do. And I'm just interested in what your thoughts are on an MOU or MUA or something like that.
Yeah, so it sounds like they offered kind of a performance-based contract for you to provide services. If now, did you turn it down because the money wasn't sufficient for what you were trying to accomplish?
I probably could have provided, it was going to be an additional warm line specifically for that district, and I could have done that. However, because of, so much feedback with teachers are always concerned about, getting in trouble, retributions on something that they've said or done. So there has to be a lot of anonymity with our support groups. And I just felt that the way that the contract was set up, it was overreaching. It would put my nonprofit almost like under the superintendent's office. And I just felt that would kind of defeat the purpose of teachers having anonymity and teachers having the freedom to say whatever it is that's, concerning them. They can be anonymous. I wouldn't want them to have to say how many hours they participated and that kind of thing, because I think a lot of times teachers don't speak up because there is that control, there is that concern that they will suffer some consequences that, they're not prepared to deal with. And I think that that's true for a lot of systems, especially in the Southeast where I live, where you don't have teacher unions and that kind of thing. I think that had it been more money, I could have somehow worked it out. But how I'm set up currently to facilitate the warm line, I just felt like it would totally rub out the anonymity part for teachers.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that you turned it down because it seems as though it just would have taken away from the fidelity of what you were looking to offer. Am I hearing the right thing?
Yes, because it would not have been enough for me to just set up a whole new system so that, any teacher in that district could get credit and maybe have a code to log in so that it wouldn't directly identify them to anyone else outside of myself. And I just felt that $20,000 wasn't enough for me to offer that. And it was going to be for a 6-month period. And I just felt that's not quite enough. And I had asked for $90,000. So.
Yeah, so in those cases where you don't get what you ask for, because I think that last part is telling and it provides clarity. When you don't get what you're asking for, it's an opportunity to either turn down the money or to do something else like renegotiate terms, right? So if you're in this space where you're new and you're trying to tap into funding for the first time, or you're growing into this space and you don't have the foundation, the organization doesn't have the reputation, the history to command $90,000, and you got to get in where you fit in, this could have been an opportunity to renegotiate terms, or to run a pilot program at a much smaller scale so that you can protect the anonymous elements of the program that means so much to you. And it could have been an opportunity to run something at a smaller scale to work out any kinks that might still be in the program, the process, that you can then propose to another school district who would be willing to offer you the $90,000 or well above 6 figures to run your program. But I think that...
Do you think I could go back to him and make a second offer for maybe like 40,000?
It depends, the school districts can be their budgets may be set in stone, right? And so that's something you got to consider. Just because there's a perception that school districts have tons of money, which in theory they do, those funds are spoken for, and the school board who votes on this type of stuff, they speak for the money, and so there has to be an awareness of what truly is available. I think that a conversation can be had to continue this idea to see if there's still an appetite. I wouldn't press for the 40 because, again, you got to take into account how does your organization stack up against other organizations who the school district typically contracts with. Is there a number of years that they're in business? Is there a performance rating? Do they have a history? Do they have a reputation? And if your organization lacks any of that or is behind the eight ball in some of those areas, which is totally fine, then you got to look at the $20,000 as an opportunity. And instead of negotiating for a higher rate, it might be in your best interest to do less, which will be equivalent to running the same program, just at a more at an affordable rate for the customer. Right. So negotiating for more, because my concern for you is if you negotiate and get 40, you're going to be doing $90,000 worth of work for 40,000. That doesn't compute well for your nonprofit and doesn't compute well for the bottom line. What makes sense is if there's a per person cost at $90,000, what is that cost, and make that fit within a $20,000 budget so that you're doing the same amount of work at the same value. So when you start to sell it to other organizations, other school districts, you will get the same value when you get a higher contract amount.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you both, Chris, Dr. Clark.
Chris, what are your reflections on that last exchange there? I mean, anything you would share from a communications perspective that could help Dr. Lisa?
So depending on go back to where when you were talking about us crossing over, we do. Development and communications crossover, they go hand in hand. You cannot do development without communications, and communications cannot be effective without working with development on some realm, because we should be, when we're communicating, we should constantly keep in mind what the development objectives are and who you're speaking to and all of that. So we do often, we work hand in hand. Now, there are some nonprofits that have put the two departments together. I am not of the belief that they should go together. I am of the belief that they should, run parallel to each other. Now, how y'all go about it, I'm not going to fight anybody about how they do it. I can just tell you that when you have one person managing development and communications, that's definitely not going to work. It never has, never will. Yeah, I did want to answer your question there. And then I did, for Dr. Lisa, have a little bit, Dr. Clark.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think that it's worth kind of reiterating this idea that one of the revenue opportunities for nonprofits is through contracts, right? And sometimes the first contract you get may not be the size of the contract you want. And I have a great example of that. We're going through that right now with a school district, just so happens to be a school district, and we got an amount that's much lower than what we expected. But the feedback we got regarding why it was less made so much sense. It was just a common sense decision by that particular school district, and we accepted it. But here's the other thing that I want to share with you guys. We got that contract. We don't have the reputation in that particular space as others. And we were competitive for a much greater amount than what we got. So to be competitive and to be seriously considered for major money, but given a smaller amount due to, specific common sense decisions that were made, that was more encouraging than anything else. Of course, we were excited about what we were able to land and secure. We wanted more, but we're positioning ourselves to do more, to get more. And so I would encourage you, Dr. Lisa, and others who are listening, as you're taking advantage of opportunities, depending on the life cycle of your organization, whether you're a new organization or you're a mature organization, small contracts can be very strategic and useful, but it's going to be important to make sure you budget accordingly and adjust the services you provide if you don't get the amount that you anticipated the first time around.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Do want to open the floor to everybody in the room who's here hanging out with us in Clubhouse. Glad to have you. You're here in the Nonprofit Funding Tips room. You're also here, and you're part of the audience for the Dr. William Clark podcast, and glad to have you guys. Chris, as we open the floor up for folks to share their reflections or questions, if you can just share again some of the top 3 things you encourage nonprofits to think about when it comes to developing a solid communication plans. What are those 3 things that come to your mind?
All right. So this is going to be different than the last list because this is coming off the top of my dome. I'm out running errands. All right. So y'all don't be hitting me up. So it's a different 3. So there's plan. You need to get a plan together. You got to strategize. Communications is too big of a job for you to accomplish what you need to without planning ahead of time, getting templates done ahead of time, getting automated systems in place to support you. And then I'll give the second surrounding what I was going to interject for Dr. Lisa as you consider the options that Dr. Clark, your development person, has given for fundraising. Know that where your communications comes in is how you go about talking to those people. So you got to know your brand. That's the second one. You have to know your brand from top to bottom. Your brand is not just your pretty colors and your logo and your website. It is a whole lot more than that. It also includes your brand personality because the color, logo, all of that, that's your brand identity. So your brand identity, if you think of a person, is kind of like it's their clothes. So, I mean, you can't just be having naked people walking around here out in the world. It's just not how it works. It's not socially acceptable, not just yet. So you have to figure out exactly who this person is. So you've got your brand personality, your brand positioning, your brand pillars. And once you do all of the work to really understand who your target client is, and then behind that, who your what their personality is, how they talk, you're going to be able to make easier decisions in anything that you're communicating, whether it's communicating with these potential sponsors, or it's communicating on social media, or it's communicating to your team and your volunteers who need to help you carry out the work that you're doing, all the way down to the way that they greet people. So for you, Dr. Lisa, that would be for your group sessions. The way that they greet the teachers who come into those group sessions, the way that they interact with them is all going to be determined by your brand personality. So you're going to want to flush your full brand out, top to bottom. And third one here, I'm sure I could find a third one somewhere, but I'll pause there, Dr. Clark.
No, that's good. And I do, it kind of gave me another thought of reflection here for Dr. Lisa and others. For those of you that find a deficit for funding for a particular project, sponsors are an awesome way to fill that gap. And please explore that. Certainly, you can schedule a consultation with me to talk about that. For those in the room, you can click on the link above my head to get on my calendar. Chris, as we close the room down, tell folks how they can get in contact with you and what's the product you're offering these days that can help nonprofits get ahead in their communication for their nonprofit organization.
Oh, snap. It's a plug, and it's an official plug, y'all. So the best way to get in contact with me is to IG. Right now 86, WRIGHT, now 86. Hit me up there, and my assistant will grab that message and kind of funnel you into the right processes. And then for what I offer, there are 2 things I'll tell you about. There's the Full Scale Communications Academy, created with the idea that communications professionals and anyone in a nonprofit that's handling communications, you need professional development. You need some training so that you can make these decisions on the fly until you build up the budget where you can afford your 5-person communications team. So the Communications Academy helps you to learn the systems and the processes and how to build a brand, all of that stuff that you need. And then the second thing I'll tell you about is if you can't get to the Academy, at the very least, download the Right Now Results Annual Communications Master Toolkit. It is currently 50% off because I want as many nonprofits as possible to at least get that toolkit, because there are 11 templates in there that'll help you. There's a communications plan template, a social media plan and marketing template. It's all kinds of templates in that thing. So if not the Academy, definitely get the Master Toolkit.
Chris, I appreciate you hanging out with us, and we got to do it again.
Agreed. I will get Nell on that.
All right, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark again. Thanks for hanging out with us with this during this particular podcast, and I hope that you got some value out of this particular podcast. Now, I want to make sure that we also close this podcast with some additional value. Now, we've created the Nonprofit Fundraising Master Class. This particular masterclass was designed by nonprofit leaders for nonprofit leaders to help you simplify your fundraising approaches without chasing funders. Now, if this is something that you want to engage in and utilize for your nonprofit organization, if you have been thinking about how to fundraise for your organization, you just don't know how to do it, if you're transitioning from one phase of fundraising to the next, or you're just trying to improve the fundraising capacity of your organization, then this particular masterclass may be the right fit for you. So if you want to submit your application and join our next cohort, then go to nonprofitfundingstrategies.com. Again, that's nonprofitfundingstrategies.com. For all others who want to just get on my calendar and chat a little bit about your nonprofit organization, we offer free consultations. So you can simply go to DrWilliamPClark.com to schedule your free consultation. Again, that's DrWilliamPClark.com for your free consultation. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this particular episode, and we'll see you guys next time. See you, everybody.